him again. Good.
And bye. The world has resumed rotating on its axis. Why? Because David Tolleris is in the house tonight, and he will be joining us to go through a week of winter weather, which is so incredibly unusual the way this winter's gone so far. But you know what? They come when they come. We've got all sorts of winter storm warnings up and winter weather advisories. I'm in a winter weather advisory. The county next to me is in a winter storm warning. We've got 2 weather systems that are moving across the south this week and impacting the eastern seaboard in one form or another. So we'll talk all about that and so much more on tonight's Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast, which is brought to you by Tempest by Weatherflow. Get the revolutionary Tempest weather system and join the fastest growing observing weather network on the planet. The link is pinned to the top. Well, it's not. I'm sorry. The link is pinned to the descriptor to this live stream and video or podcast if you're listening to us on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Use the coupon code I want a weather station, and if you do, you will get.
You'll get 10% off.
Yes, you will.
Where else can you get a deal like that?
That's correct. All right, guys, welcome. Let me just say hello to everybody on the chat board on this Sunday night. Welcome to the Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast with our special guest, Mr. Dave Tolleris of Weather Risk. And we're happy that you had a good weekend. I hope you had a good weekend. Those of you lurking in the background, not on the chat board, if you want to be part of the conversation, we just get on the chat board and yap and leave some questions, whatever it is. We're here for you. Subscribe to my YouTube channel and make sure you turn your notifications on because we're on Sunday through Thursday at 7:35 p.m. And if there's a storm on the table, we will add a Friday or a Saturday or both, and we'll let you know, especially if you have your notifications on. And 100 likes, we love it when we get to 100 likes. So if you like the show, hit the like button and make all 3 of us happy.
There you go.
All right. So, Mr. Rayo, we'll start the show with you. We'll start tonight by talking about today's snow squalls. Did you get one?
No, did not. Get very windy out there. And in fact, way off to adjacent to my house is a big wooded area. And that's pretty much where I toss all of the old leaves that have fallen during the fall. And guess what? It got so windy today because we had west-southwesterly winds that all the leaves got blown back onto my property. And so tomorrow I'm probably going to have to go out there with a rake and a broom and shovel up all of those leaves because I don't want snow to fall on them, which is look like it's going to happen on late tomorrow night and on into a good part of Tuesday.
Yeah. I hate snow on leaves.
Yeah.
It's some people say, well, you don't want to rake the leaves or whatever like that. Well, at least the snow covers them up.
David, how are you?
I'm not dead.
Well, how could you be? You were booked tonight to be on the Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast.
Doesn't mean I can't be dead. Doesn't mean I can't be dead. No. I've been dead before, and I've been on radio and TV shows.
Well, if that's your plan, do it after we sign off, okay?
All righty. Good advice.
Yes. So we've got two systems to deal with this week. We have a lot of cold air around the United States. There's Arctic air everywhere. This first one that's moving across the south and then kind of nudging its way up the eastern seaboard. It's one of those. To me, I'm sorry.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. To me, it's one of those types of systems where you pull your head out because you're trying to fight every flake, and then every so often you get a system like that like this where it looks kind of innocuous, and somebody winds up hitting a jackpot, doubling double what you forecast. So I'm wondering how you see this evolving tonight across the deep south, where we got a ton of winter storm warnings, and then as it kind of turns its way northward.
Well, from my perspective, I mean, you look at the radar now, you can see there's quite a bit of snow going on in western and central Tennessee, northern Mississippi,
Well, let me put. I'll bring the rate up on the screen so everybody can see.
Yeah, northeast Arkansas, southeast Missouri, the Boot Heel, far southern Illinois, western central Kentucky, southwest Indiana. So.
Well, I'm kind of for me. I'm kind of happy at least right now with the radar because the southern end of the echo seems to be pretty far south. And when I look at the models, the European and the GFS in particular, for me here in North Georgia, I'm about 20 miles south of the North. If you see where North Carolina and Georgia meet, so I'm about 20 miles south of that line. And
what's your temperature? What's your temperature?
36.
Okay.
And I'm at 2,200 feet. I'm just happy to see the dew points here are low. I'm just happy to see the echoes as far south as they are because all the models for the last 3 days as I'm watching this, and it's the southern edge, you go from nothing to 3 or 4 inches on how the models were displaying it anyway, literally over a 20-mile span. So.
Sure.
So one run the cutoffs at on the North Carolina state line. The next run it's 25 miles south of me. So I'm threading a very fine needle here, and I want to
me and you both. And
I want to see some snow.
You have a pretty good chance because of your elevation, because of the southern end, and also because it's coming in early. The problem here in Richmond is that the 1 inch line goes right through Richmond. So south side of Richmond will probably I'll end up with more flakes in my hair than what falls out of the sky. Then the north side of Richmond, Henrico County, northern Richmond, the north side, as you go up towards, Charlottesville and Ashland, places like that, they're going to end up with a few inches. So the line's going through me. The problem is when the main precipitation starts, my temperature is going to be very close to 32 or 33 degrees. So, this is going to be a problem. When your precipitation starts, Joe, you're going to be at night.
Right.
So that makes a big difference, and that's one of the reasons why, if everybody's seen the model that I know everybody mostly in your show looks at the Northeast, but the big jackpot winner of this storm is going to be Eastern Kentucky, Eastern Tennessee, and Southwest Virginia and West Virginia. They're going to get like 4 to 8 inches of snow. You can see it on short range models. And that's what this is. This is one of those storms which breaks up the Shenandoah Valley. You're going to see the snow goes right up Knoxville, Roanoke, break out towards Winchester. It'll be snowing in Washington and Leesburg and Winchester before it snows in Richmond, because it just breaks out of the valley. So, that's what I anticipate happening.
Well, I just have a general rule that when I look at with the systems that come up to the Northeast, especially with regards to New York City and Long Island and so on, is that if it starts snowing, if it starts snowing in Glens Falls before it starts snowing in New York City, you have a problem.
Yeah.
Usually it's warmer air. Yeah. Joe, did you do a snow map?
I don't know if you want to call it a problem. Oh yes, thank you. So
all right. So
came in with some bells because we went over 100 a short while ago.
Oh, okay. Yes, 100 likes. Thank you. Next stop, 200. Did you do a snow map, Joe?
No, primarily because you probably noticed I'm not in my usual spot. We're doing some refurbishing downstairs, and among other things, we're doing some painting. And I really don't like fresh paint on the walls, especially when it's near my office. And I think my office is going to be next. We're doing a whole bunch of stuff this week.
Well, Mr. Reuben Fairchild demanded that we get a new set. So,
Well, it's not going to be a new set. It's just going to be a freshly painted or freshly refurbished set. But the thing is, Joe, even if I were to do a snow map, and I don't know if Dave would agree with me, the snow map would be basically showing the same range for virtually the entire tri-state area. I said on my Facebook forecast, couple of inches, maybe 3. I was thinking about 1 to 3, but there's nothing that really stands out.
Yes.
Long Island versus the Hudson Valley versus New York. This is going to be generally, and it's also going to be a long duration event. It looks like snow will start moving in, however lightly, after midnight tomorrow night, and then will stay on and off, or periods of intermittent snow during much of the day on Tuesday. And when it's all over, said and done, Some may have one, others may have two, maybe as much as three. But if you're thinking about this being a massive snow event, well, I guess it would be massive for Central Park because they're still trying to break that string of days with
1 inch. Yeah.
1 inch or less of snowfall. But it does not really, look like a major or significant snow event here in the
It's not.
area.
It's not. Yeah.
Well, I did a snow map, okay, sort of. But I agree with you, Joe. It was just, when I first sat down this morning, I was going to draw a snow map, and I'm like, what am I going to do? Draw a box and just put in the box that it says a coating to a couple of inches? It's not really, you can't. And deleting 1 inch versus 2 inches, that's, to me, that's sort of silly. Although I will tell you, and Dave, I'm sure you've experienced this. You forecast. There's two things, and I'll bring the snow map that's coming to my mind. Two things that bug me. You forecast a coating to an inch or so, or a coating to an inch or maybe two, and it doesn't happen. Okay, or maybe if it happens, it's just even more minimal than what I've described.
That's and
then right, and then you get, of course, then you get the trolls that deluge you. So that's one thing. Because my response to that is, you're making a big deal out of this. It was forecast was a coating to an inch or two, and okay, so we didn't get it, or we got less than that, and you're wasting energy, and showing anger to me over that. That's one thing I can't deal with. The other thing that I'm kind of mystified with, and Joe, I bet you experienced this because we've talked about it before. Okay, so let's say you forecast 1 to 3 or 2 to 4. Just those two amounts. Let's say you're forecasting 1 to 3 or 2 to 4. And you get 1 to 3 or 2 to 4. I'll get people put up there that describe it, that say, oh, this is a bust. And I'm thinking, how is it now? I'm looking at it in terms of the forecast. If the forecast is for 1 to 3 and you get 1 to 3, then that's what it is. And the forecast was good. But apparently some people think that every time you put any number, whether it's a coating to an inch or 2 to 3 or 3 to 4, that if they don't get 18 to 24 out of it, somehow it's a bust. And yet it's not something that was going to happen anyway. So that mystifies me. I don't even know how to respond to that because that just drives me crazy.
Well, the good news is that constitutionally, I'm not responsible for stupid people.
Well, that goes without saying.
I mean, it's. Oh, and the other one, Joe and Joe, that you get is the people who say it's a bust before it even begins. You've seen that, right?
Yes, that, and I usually write back. Here's a suggestion, because me, I'm so incredibly passive aggressive. For me, it's an art form. Here's a suggestion. Why don't we actually wait for the time, the storm to go by and do what it's going to do before you decide to, call it a bust?
Well,
it hasn't even happened yet.
My usual response is, you do understand there's a difference between 8 a.m. and 8 p.m., right? You do get that, right?
Yeah, I understand that. All right, so let's bring it on the screen. And, of course, nothing symbolizes the great Dave Tolleris more than the Sherlock Holmes dog with the hat on and the glasses and the pipe. Did you created this yourself?
I found it somewhere a long time ago on free media on the internet somewhere. So it's just, yeah.
Well, like you and I, we're Joe. You're a Sherlock Holmes fan?
Yes, in fact, I listen to old time radio and listen to a lot of the episodes of Sherlock Holmes. So yeah, I'm a big fan.
Yeah, I'm a hardcore fan. I like the BBC, the Sherlock ones. I like the ones that were done like 20 years ago with Jeremy Brett.
I could watch.
Those were spectacular.
I could watch Basil Rathbone and Nigel Bruce though over and over again. And
in terms, as now when you're a fanatic like me, in terms of what they did with the books, and it's just, I know they're very popular and I've watched them, but as a hardcore Sherlock Holmes fan, I have I don't know, maybe 200 Sherlock Holmes books. They drive me nuts because there wasn't, Watson's an idiot in those movies. He's a
Oh yeah, I
moron.
know. By the way, just real quick, I think I might have asked you this before. Did you like the the British series with Benedict
Loved it.
Cumberbatch?
Absolutely loved it. Absolutely
I
perfect.
loved it too. I wish they would do
Absolutely
another
perfect.
season. It was brilliant. It really was.
Absolutely perfect.
Cumberbatch was just he was just so great as Sherlock.
When they first came on, people I was watching it would turn it off. Okay, and they were sending me out of the room, and I would have 15 or 20 minutes to figure out how the crime was or the mystery was done.
Yeah.
And I got most of them. I got most of them. I really did.
I got a few of them. I got a few of them. But I really enjoyed it. All right, let's get to your maps.
Yes, sir.
We'll put the dog away, and of course, Dave Tolleris his company is weatherrisk.com.
Not those guys.
Grains, commodities, and always charming. Okay, so I have your.
Before we start here.
Yes.
Mr. Reuben Fairchild, I knew he couldn't help but post something like this on the chat board. He says, "Finally, another broadcast. Why do you guys not work on Saturdays?"
You know,
you want to answer that, Joe?
I have so many times. Stop. Mr. Reuben Fairchild, stop. Okay? That's all I'm going to say.
I mean, we've only worked, I think we've only worked like 9 out of the last 11 days.
I appreciate that he thinks, he enjoys the show, but I don't think there's anybody doing a weather show 7 days a week, 365. So, you know what? We like to take a day off every once in a while so that we can scratch our rear ends and relax. And that's what we're doing. Okay, so.
Yeah, but the thing is, I always scratch my rear end, whether it's weekend or not.
Yes, very attractive. All right, I've got your map up, which is just, artwork. So, explain.
When it comes up, let me see if it shows up. Oh, there it is. Hey, I see it now. Okay, now let me call it up here so I can see more detail. There we go. So on the map, I had the area 5 to 8, and again, if you look at most of the model data, 18Z HRR, the 18Z NAM, the GFS, the European, the high resolution Canadian, they all have this plume of moisture coming up from Tennessee up into West Virginia and Southwest Virginia. So 5 to 8, and and also that's where the Arctic air is. So their snow ratios are going to be higher than what you'd see east of the Blue Ridge. So I'm a little concerned. There may be some 10 inches in there, but I just went 5 to 8. Okay, and then 3 to 6 up the Shenandoah Valley, up into the Western Maryland. You can see that the 3 to 6 inch band. I have that 3 to 6 inch line just west of Charlottesville. A lot of people going 2 to 4 there. That's fine. It could be that. I may do one more late tonight or early tomorrow morning, but this is probably going to stick with this.
And you have 2 to 4 basically for the big cities.
Yeah, Charlottesville, D.C., Baltimore, Philly, Trenton, Newark, New York City, Hartford, Connecticut, Boston, Providence, Binghamton. Yeah, it's essentially a 2 to 4 inch band. So that's what it looks like to me. And eventually what happens is, after you get the initial burst, the low develops, you see that, and you get some sort of moisture, baroclinic leaf that develops right over the Northeast, starting in New Jersey, eastern Pennsylvania, New Jersey. And, you get your dump of 6 hours of moderate snow, and then it comes, 8 hours of moderate snow, it kind of comes to an end. And that seems fine to me. I got the 2 inch line west of Richmond. I got the 1 inch line just south of Richmond up to Salisbury. Atlantic City's between 1 to 2 inches. You see the 2 inch line go up towards eastern Long Island and Cape Cod. I noticed a lot of the models over the last 24 hours also have Southeast Mass getting kind of mixture there in the eastern forks of Long Island. So I don't know. You can make an argument either way. And then by the time this is over, I don't think they'll have to call out the National Guard. I'm pretty sure they won't. Okay, so killer flurries, fill at 11, and that's the way that goes.
Right.
So
all right. So
the big winners to me is West Virginia, Southwest Virginia, Eastern Kentucky, Eastern Tennessee. I mean, they're getting a dump of snow, and they got high snow resolutions, and those areas don't get Eastern Kentucky, Northeast Tennessee. They're really hard to get a good snow because a lot of the storms go the Ohio Valley over them. And then you get the southern storms, which bypass them because they're too far to the northwest. So they have a very particular snow climatology, and this is one of those systems look like it's going to hit them, from what I can see.
Now I got your second map up, and now are these start times? Because I couldn't.
Yes.
Okay, because
Yeah, the start times.
Okay.
But the black line, in Southwest Virginia is 4 a.m. The blue line is like 7 a.m. The red line, I didn't put the time in there. I should have. Is like 10 a.m. And then you can see it going up. The brown line, you see it's 10 a.m. The green line is 2 p.m. The purple line is 5 p.m. Getting further north, and then getting into New York by 8 p.m. So
I guess what confused me when I first looked at it is that you've got the 8 p.m. line to New York City and Long Island. Then you have it inside out in the ocean. You got it inside the other two lines.
Complain, but I may have to redo that map because it's causing some confusion.
Okay, so did you accidentally just draw that line there, that brown line that goes back? Okay.
It's not significant in that regard.
Okay, so because I was looking at this like, what is he trying to say here?
No. Yeah.
And then you got him.
He's faster than what I was saying. I'm thinking that the first flakes in the New York City area probably wouldn't arrive until after maybe 2 or 3 in the morning on Tuesday. So
looking at the data here, let me see. Let me see if there's any new downs.
I mean, if you get a few flakes in the air, let's say at 8 or 9 or 10 o'clock tomorrow night, I mean, that's one thing. But I mean, like, I'm talking about like, a steady.
Yeah. I know what you mean. Sure.
All right.
Again, this is not the storm of the century that we're looking at.
No, well, clearly not. And Keith James II, I think that storm of the century thing was in 2003, and not in 2001.
The President's Day storm?
No, the one.
Part 2.
No, the one. That's the one that John Bellaris got into big trouble with.
Oh, that was March. That was March 3rd, 4th, 2001. Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
That was before the hookers. Yeah.
Yes. All right. So basically, when I do my maps, I kind of try to just focus on, where where my home is. Well, I mean, where my home was in the Northeast. So I didn't go as far enough south and west. I was kind of hoping that you would have gotten down at least into northern Georgia, so I could have seen what your opinion was on that. But so I just basically sort of broad brushed up to a couple of inches. I thought that was fair. South Jersey and coastal and the South Jersey counties that are closer, to the east. Maybe they wind up have to fight it with rain because they almost always seem to find a way, especially when the ocean is warm as it is. I sort of straddled the line across eastern Long Island and southeastern New England, also for the idea that maybe some rain, and then I kind of boxed in a 2 to 3 inch area up in from just right from your house, Joe, straight west and then northeast across Connecticut out and on up through Massachusetts. It's more challenging sometimes to draw a map when you've got you're getting a minimal amount of snow as opposed to drawing a map when you have getting a lot of snow, because it's like
I agree, and in fact for a while this afternoon I said, so what does it look like, 1 to 3 or 2 to 4, 1 to 3 or 2 to 5?
Does it matter? No, but I'm just saying, from the standpoint of what 1 to 3 versus 2 to 4, it's not a huge difference, but in terms of how it's perceived in the public. But you find yourself battling over that small difference.
Yeah, I said 2 inches on average. Once again, what you were talking about earlier, is if some people get 1, if some people get 3, I'm sure if somebody gets 3.1 inches. They're going to come back and say, you screwed, Rayo. You blew it. You can't win. You remember, I read an email that I got from, or a message I got on Facebook. This is with the last storm about a week ago, just over a week ago. And I was like fine tuning and refurbishing and tweaking and everything else. And one guy said, why don't you just wait until after the storm is over? And then you'll have a good idea of what's going to happen or whatever. And thankfully, people came to my defense. They said, look, if you don't want a forecaster who's constantly changing or adjusting his forecast based upon what he's seeing on the observations or whatever, and go somewhere else. And
I had to go through this yesterday with on the snowstorm Twitter page and on the Facebook page. I was telling people back on Saturday morning, Saturday afternoon, that the big storm threat for Tuesday is over. Okay, and then I would have to remind people that doesn't mean no snow. That's just the big storm. Okay, the big storm idea is over. So then when the model started shifting, last night into this morning, people saying, well, the snow's coming back. I said, I never said the snow's gone. I just said the big storm. You understand the difference between a big snow and 1 to 2 inches?
Dave, Dave, they cherry pick what they want to hear.
Well, the issue that's part of it. But also the other issue is, and then I usually hit them with this one. Are you actually telling me that you think that it's wrong for me to change the forecast when the data comes in? So you want me to intentionally keep telling you that there's a big snow coming when there's not a big snow? Is that what you're asking me? Now, most people who are weather hobbyists will say, well, no, I don't want that.
Right.
Well, what are you complaining about? The data changed, so the forecast changed. Put on your big boy pants and stop crying.
Well, I don't know if you get this, Dave, and I got one today, and actually it ended well because the person came back and explained where they were coming from. But nothing gets my back up more. Now, you have a subscription. You have a subscription site, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. I have a subscription site. So
yes.
I put, I do stuff. I do free stuff. I do 3 videos a day that are free. I do a weather post that's free, and occasionally I might throw up something else. But there's stuff that I do on my subscription site and that I don't put on the
Sure.
site. And
Sure.
one of the things that I decided was a priority for me was 2 of the things. One is when real-time weather is going on, I'm not putting anything on Facebook. I do that for my subscription people. Today, I pulled up the radars when the snow squalls were coming and the snow squall warnings that were up. I didn't put that out publicly. Okay, that's one thing. The other thing I do is my snowfall forecast map. When I do my first call, which I usually do 72 hours before, I don't make it public anymore. I just, I do it for my subscribers out of respect to them because they really want to see it. I do it for my snow removal people, but I no longer put it up in public. But I do put up a post, and it's kind of blurred out because there's a paywall, and I'll get somebody will say, inevitably, I'll get somebody who will say, well, why should I pay for this when you could get weather for free? And I cannot tell you how that galls me. Okay. First of all, my immediate response is to that person, do you work for free? Do you go to an office 5 days a week and work for free? Because if you do, you're a fool. Okay. And I'm sure you don't. All right. And it's my work, and I spend a lot of time doing it. And if you want to see it, you're going to have to subscribe. And the notion that they could get weather free everywhere else. Well, let's take that apart, okay? You could go to the weather service websites to get your weather for free. But guess what? It's not free. You pay taxes. Your taxes are paying for the weather service, and the salaries and the equipment and everything else is coming out of your pocket. So that's not free. Oh, then you know what? I'll go to my TV weather guy. Well,
that's not free.
That's not free either because you're paying a cable outlet or a streaming service, and some of that money goes back to the stations that provide, that are being streamed. So that's not free. So it's not free. So why should I be free? And why some people it's a very small, and they seem to think that they have to vocalize this opinion, to which I don't give a rat's rear end about. But to me it's just so insulting this entitlement that some people seem to have, this attitude of entitlement that they're entitled to somebody who's worked for free. I said, if that's the case, you know what? Come to my house and clean my toilets because they need cleaning, and you're not getting paid for it. I know it's kind of a graphic example there. I saw Joe Rayo put his head down, cover his eyes, but you get my point here. That drives me nuts. Just drives me nuts. If you don't like it, scroll by. Nobody cares about your opinion. Scroll by.
part of the whole interaction with Facebook is, social media, and the more intense the exchange is, the bigger the thread becomes, and the more and more people get involved.
Right.
I mean, there is a serious blowback at which anybody who's been paying attention to the news who realizes that, social media, Facebook, they've done actual serious damage to the social structure of the country.
Oh, yeah.
Our institutions, our politics, the civility, just the basic being civil to other people, because you say things that you would never say in public to each other. So there is that, which is a problem as well. And yeah, thinking, I don't know necessarily if it's just a sense of entitlement. I don't think people really think it through, because, when I've done to people, they go, oh, well, yeah, I guess we do pay for it. And then they say, no, I'm not against you making a living. I just thought that the service was for free. And I said, well, I provide a lot of information for free. And then I do stuff for myself, other people, which have more interest in it. And I remind people when they're willing to engage. And I said, listen, there are people out there who have the specific detailed weather needs, like ski resorts.
Right.
Now, and I've run into ski operators where people say, well, I can get my ski temperatures from the National Weather Service. So I'm like, no, you can't. And that creates an argument, because some people have said, well, if the Weather Service is providing temperatures for Snowshoe, Virginia, or for mountain snow in Vermont, they're taking money out of our pocket. I mean, that was an old AccuWeather argument. They were making that argument. And I was telling them, no, that's not the case. The problem is that the operator is stupid. It's not that it's nothing to do with the National Weather Service, because if you have a snow operator who thinks he can get detailed snow information about temperatures and dew points and winds and wet bulb for free from the National Weather Service, so, you're dealing with an idiot.
In which case, if that's the case, then why is he even bothering you with the whole thing to begin with? What?
Right.
Is it because he's saying to you, well, I don't have to pay you because I can get it for free, with this, that, and the other thing. Why do I care? If you're going to say that to me, I don't care. Okay,
right.
Knock yourself out. Do whatever it is you want. But the fact that you're expressing an opinion to me to let me know that you're doing this is so irrelevant to me. That's that whole thing is just like, scroll by, leave me alone.
It's stupid, essentially, but it's just it's just stupid.
It is. It is.
One of the things I found out when I started doing this was that I guess people know this. I didn't know this. When you pour concrete or tar, you pave the streets, they've only been done in certain temperatures, certain conditions.
Right.
I didn't know that. Otherwise, it cracks and it breaks.
Right.
So that opened up a whole new field of revenue for me. I didn't know anything about it. When I got into the private sector, like, really? Concrete? I didn't know that.
Oh,
okay, farm, vineyards, I get that. Okay, concrete, tar? Oh, I guess so, yeah.
There's a lot of things that people need, some one-on-one. I know I have somebody that needs accurate information because they take their family member for health reasons to take them out, and it's not easy. So they need somebody to talk to one-on-one to get information. Is it going to rain? Is it going to be raining at 4:00? Because this is where this is what time my appointment is, et cetera, et cetera. We're talking like $2 a month, $5 a month. You can go to Starbucks and get a cup of coffee. That's what I charge. I'm not charging $1 million here, or even hundreds of dollars. I'm talking a couple of bucks a month just so that I can get myself some cigars and maybe a couple of beers and pay a bill or two. Anyway, I'm sorry. Just enough of that. Let's.
I may have to cut out of here at 8:30. So in the 19 minutes that's remaining,
okay,
maybe we can talk about the upcoming weather, not just beyond Monday.
You want to go to the January 20th storm?
Yeah, all right. Let me just really quick run through what's going just tonight in terms of watches and warnings. We still have some winter storm warnings up in north central New York and in just a handful of counties around Buffalo from the lake effect stuff they had. Numerous winter weather advisories, winter storm warnings running from southwestern Virginia, southwestern West Virginia, south and west into eastern Kentucky, Tennessee, a few counties in western North Carolina, northern and northwest Georgia. Like I said, that from the county, I'm in Union County, Fannin County, and west they're all under winter storm warnings. Northern Alabama, Jess Harden, I hope you're enjoying yourself. Northern Mississippi, northern Louisiana. I was checking Lake. They have winter weather advisories through much of southern Louisiana, and I was pulled up Lake Charles temperatures because the front didn't go through there, and they were sitting at 70 degrees. So, the cold air hadn't made it that far south, and we've got advisories back to Texas. Warnings in western half of Colorado, and then in the Wasatch and Utah, winter storm warnings there. Just real quick too, just for context for what we're talking about, WPC has basically a 50 to 60% chance of at least two from Northeast Virginia up into southern and central New England and parts of eastern New York. You can see it cuts down in southern New Jersey and over eastern Long Island. We also have 80 to 100% probability from northern Mississippi northeastward up into West Virginia for at least two. And if we put up the probability of at least four, where Dave pointed out, eastern Tennessee, western Virginia, southeastern Kentucky, a 50 to 60% or higher probability for at least four. So, they're there. And then for Friday into Saturday, WPC in the long range, which is their day 7 in the long range, they've got a fairly large area of 10 to 30% covering much of the northeast and northern mid-Atlantic states, and a 50% probability of at least a few inches in southeastern New England. So now we can get to, let's look at the upper air, because it's some pretty interesting things. I have the 12Z guidance up of the GFS, David. It should be up on the screen momentarily. Let me just say real quick, Keith James, thank you for hitting Super Chat, the tip jar. Dave mentioned on a prior interview how winters last longer into March. Is that going to be true this year? Dave, quick answer for that, please.
Yes. Yes. As
the
arena continues the weekend, I think it will continue to be that way. Yes.
Okay. Sorry to make it short, Keith, but Joe's good. Like you said, he's got to go. All right. So here's the situation. We have this trough, of course, that moved through this weekend and brought in the Arctic air, and you could kind of see the short wave that moved through today that crossed into the Northeast, and now we're in this chilly flow, and the upper air winds are starting to come around. This next short wave, I mean, it's there, but it's nothing especially. Unlike the GFS lately has gotten into this habit beyond 96 hours, and even in one instance inside 48 hours, where it likes to make cutoffs, and showed a much sharper trough in the mix, swinging through, and that's turning out not to be the case. We've got this sort of broad bowl look in the upper air, and this is not an upper air that's supportive of a big storm.
No.
Well, 5 days ago, exactly what you were saying, Joe, about the GFS. Like 5 days ago, if you had looked at the GFS for this particular storm coming up for Monday night, Tuesday,
they had a big deal.
They were going for like 8 and 9 inches of snow for the tri-state area. But with each passing run and with each passing day, they shaved a little of that off. It went from 8 inches to 6 inches, then to 4 inches, then down to where we are now, 2 inches. It's been doing that now, and they even were doing that with the storm on Friday, saying 8 inches, 9 inches. Now they're shaving it down again. So it's difficult to take the GFS at face value beyond, let's say, 3, 4, 5 days, because as you just said, they seem to have this propensity to cut things off, to create cutoff lows, which of course leads to enhanced precipitation. But then as we get closer to the event, it no longer is a cutoff. It's more like an open wave, short wave, and a fast mover too. So, I wouldn't put too much emphasis on any forecast put out by the GFS, at least at this moment in time, much beyond 3 or 4 days.
Cioffi, can you change that projection to North America?
Absolutely.
Please do so, sir.
Thank you to David Fuller, who hit Super Chats. He's saying, good evening, Joes. That a snow squall was awesome. I was driving through it on my way home today. Some people had it. Many others did not. As I said, all I had here at my home base was just a lot of strong winds, but they did issue a snow squall warning for parts of the lower Hudson Valley, most notably in Orange County, where they were tracking snow, a particular snow squall moving at 60 miles per hour. Wow.
Yeah,
That's impressive.
I saw a few posts on my Facebook page saying this, some of these, some where they got caught by them, and it was, an interesting 15 minutes. Let's put it that way. All right, the 500 is up for you. I've got the North America view. The first picture is the 18Z of today, so 1 o'clock this afternoon. Big,
if you get to, let me take a look at which one I want to look at here. Okay, so if you go to, let's say, 66 hours.
All right, and while it's rotating, you can see all the higher than normal heights.
The purple,
all across. I mean, way above normal heights across the Arctic region, from Greenland right up, toward Siberia. So you want which hour was it? The 90?
66.
66. Okay, 66 is up.
Okay.
WNBC.
Oh, Jesus, don't worry. So you can see the vortex is sitting there in north of the Great Lakes. And you can see the cyclonic circulation, some rather broad shaped circulation. You look at the lines going around it as it drops down from the Dakotas and swings through the Midwest. It goes through Virginia and the Mid-Atlantic. So the problem here is that you get any sort of low pressure, there's nothing to stop it from flying right off the coast. There's nothing in Nova Scotia or no ocean along the Atlantic Ocean to stop it from flying off the coast. So anything that just comes down, like you just drew exactly there, Joe, that it just flies off the coast. And if you advance it to 90 hours, you'll see exactly what happens.
Okay.
Advance it to 90 hours.
90 hours it is. Joe, if you could just monitor the super chats, please.
Yeah, Brandon Doherty just hit the super chat. Did he hit it twice? I'm not even sure. David Fuller, and I got one for Brandon Doherty. He said, "Buy day of a cup of coffee or a cigar." So there you go. By the way, I only found this out today at McDonald's. If you want to buy a Big Mac at McDonald's, $7.99.
Oh my God!
Wow.
Well, I don't, and I won't.
My son says, by the way, if you get the McDonald's app, you get like a 2-for-1, and it only will cost you like $3.99 or whatever. But there you go.
Yeah, but you won't be able to crap for a week. So.
Yeah,
It's a trade-off. You know what I'm saying? You save some money, but it's a trade-off. That's what I'm saying.
All right. Well,
So then on that 96 hour with the map you have up there, you can see the whole vortex is now leaving. It's flying out to east of Labrador. Well, and the purple area, the block, part of breaking down.
Right, but part of it is moving out east, and part of it is hanging back near James Bay, and there's like this east-west trough that goes west from there, just north of the Canadian border.
Right. So again, any low pressure coming out of Illinois or Michigan is going to go only one direction, straight west to east, stuck in that flow. It just depends on where the low forms. If the low's in Kentucky, it goes across Virginia. If the low's in northern Illinois, it goes across, let's say, by Binghamton and through Boston. And everybody north of that low gets snow, everybody south of it gets rain. So it just depends on where the low forms. But there's that sort of flow. You're not going to get a low go up the coast, let's say, from Georgia to Boston. That's not going to happen, not in that flow.
Okay. So, well, and this is, by the way, at 7 a.m. Thursday. Now, after that, as part of the vortex goes out, part of it hangs back. The part that hangs back begins to rotate around, and this arm comes down. Okay.
Yep.
And
yep.
And at least on this run, and actually, from my impression of today's European, it was also looked. It seemed like we were on a streak there where every run was more and more dynamic, and this one sort of followed along in that logic here. And the trough axis actually is almost at a neutral tilt, right at 80. And you can see the flow is backing southwest all along the eastern seaboard.
Right.
So, I mean, how realistic do you think? And the other thing that, in the overall scheme of things, one of the things that I like about this, I mean, if you're rooting for I don't want to say a big snow, but let's say a more sizable snowfall than 2 to 4
Right.
inches, is the fact that when I'm looking upstream, I'm not seeing something crashing that ridge. I'm not
Right.
seeing I'm not seeing some renegade shortwave in the flow that screws up the first one and maybe
Sure, sure,
flattens out
sure.
the trough. So, it's not a noisy pattern like you
Right.
sometimes see. And the European was sort of reflecting the same idea. And
Yeah, it does.
and
It does.
I kind of thought that this was, fairly a decent dynamic look all the
Yeah.
way through. And
Also, there's research which shows that when you have a big block, negative NEO, and it begins to move towards neutral, begins to wash out.
right,
If you get a trough on the East Coast, there's a higher probability of getting an East Coast storm when the NEO is breaking down. It's called a phase change storm.
right, and
So,
we've been actually talking about that. The NAO and the AO both
right.
were going from, well, the AO in particular was going from 2.5 standard deviations from the mean to 0 in a handful of days, and the
Yes.
NAO I think was going for like 1.5 standard deviations negative to the neutral line in like 3 or 4 days. So
Yes.
it's a fast ascent. And yeah, that's telling you that there's big pressure changes going on across hemispherically, and that's probably going to try and make a big storm somewhere out of that to reflect that big change. So
Yeah, that upward pattern tells me, I mean, because the other thing is the core, the 500 low stays really far north. So you're going to get something forming at the bottom of the trough and it's going to swing through, the northeast. So it's not going to bomb. It may bomb out. By the time it bombs out, it'll be too far off the coast. But it certainly looks more substantial than what we're going to get tomorrow and Tuesday. Yeah, I agree with that.
right.
And it looks to me to be mostly a northern mid-Atlantic New England snowstorm, everything north of the Pennsylvania-Maryland border. I'm not the one for Friday. My area south of the Pennsylvania Turnpike. I think it's Bupkis. But yeah, New York, New England. I think the potential's there for several inches out of that.
And then behind it should be one last shot of cold air that comes down into the eastern part of the United States that lasts for a couple of days, and then
and then blowtorch.
now and then we go into I'm kind of looking at this as a relaxation period. It just the fact that when you go from this, and I just rolled it back to Tuesday, where you've got all these higher than normal pressures all across the Arctic region back to Greenland, and that would be for Tuesday, starting this coming Tuesday. And by the time you get to Sunday, it's completely. I mean, talk about a radical shift here.
Yeah,
You have abnormally
swing,
low. I mean, it's a violent shift that's going on. What do you think about the look of that Pacific jet in the Pacific? Is that obviously it's getting fire hose-ish because of the fact that the flow across the United States is going more pretty much west-east, and you're getting some ridging that is going to be coming into the eastern United States. Do you see, and I'm assuming that based on what you've been talking about with the long range, and from what I looked at in terms of the longer range and the Climo, some of the Climo models, particularly the CFS, which we all know CFS stands for Can't Forecast Doo-Doo, that starts with the letter S. This to me does look like it's a relatively short duration temporary shift. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I do. In fact, you can see that by January 30th and 31, we're already back into a substantial ridge on the West Coast and a significant trough in the eastern U.S. The European wants to build back a new block in the Greenland. The GFS doesn't. It just has it cold with a big trough. So, and that's, there's no reason to think. And again, it didn't get a lot of attention because back on January 5, everybody was talking about the January 7th storm. But, the climate models for January 5 that came out from the European, the CFS, the GFS, and the Canadian will all have a pretty cold, stormy looking February. They really do. And of course, nobody paid any attention to it because we were talking about the January 7th storm when these models came out on January 4 or 5. But they're pretty bullish about February. They really are.
Well,
cold we're going to get into about a week from now. I'll call it a winterlude or a winter mission, and that'll be with us for a short time, and then we get to the end of the month, and then we switch back to a a more active and maybe a colder weather pattern.
Well, that's a better term than I came up with. Winterlude. Mine came up with is like a winter bathroom break. So I guess.
Well,
or a winter mission.
So the CFS I have on the screen is the mean 500 pattern, and this is from January 21st to January 28th. And just as quickly, if this is correct, I was actually kind of impressed that it did this, because now when we go to the week number 2, take a look. It's, I mean, another very radical, as you said, violent shift in the upper air pattern. Solid trough, vortex up in Hudson Bay, solid trough all the way, below normal heights all the way into northern Florida. That's a cold look.
It's pretty cold, yeah. That's pretty cold, yep. Yep.
And it sort of holds it in for week 3, week 4, week 5. I'm sorry. So that was. So this is
week 6.
This is week 3, 4, 5, 6. No, I got my counts wrong. This is week 4, week 5, week 6. No, I still got my counts wrong. 3, 4, 5, 6. So week 6 is February 18th to February 25th. And we're still in what looks like, in terms of the average, the mean pattern here is a bullish, mostly bullish winter pattern.
Yes, I would agree with that at this point. I definitely would agree with that at this point. So,
all right.
Yeah, I mean, that's how I see it. So, and we just have to see how March plays out, whether we can pick up any lost ground in March from December. But and then it's time to ready for the baseball season.
I'm gonna bow out right about now, but I just want to mention just a couple of things. Number one, thanks to Ken Musillo, Frank Scalera, and Joseph Lepresti for hitting Super Chat tonight, the tip jar. And so long as Mr. Tolleris and Mr. Cioffi continue for a while longer, there's still a chance for more hits for those of you who are still on the chat board. Number two, I want to thank everybody for getting us close to, at this moment, we're up to 195 likes, so we're only 5 away from hitting 200. That certainly is very, very nice. And number three, Joe, when I guess you and I get back together again tomorrow night, it's quite conceivable that National Weather Service will have maybe
winter sweater advisories.
A winter weather advisory for our area. What used to be known as, back in the day when the three of us were getting started in this business all those years ago, a traveler's advisory.
Oh yeah.
Right. But it'll be interesting to watch for that again for tomorrow night late into the good part of the day on Tuesday.
You can ring the bell because we're at 2:08.
I wish I had a bell.
Oh, you don't have the bell. All right.
You have a bell? My wife is in charge of the bell, but she's in another room.
Don't worry about it. Save the bell for ding, 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 ding. Okay. All right, Joe. David and I are going to go on for a little while, so nobody go away.
Can you hear the bell?
I heard the bell.
All right. There you go. All right. Good night, everybody.
All right. So let's talk about the Friday system, and I have the 18Z. I have the 18Z run. And,
yes, sir.
Of course, when you suddenly, you get a bunch of runs in a row that are looking one way, naturally you have to get thrown a curveball. The one thing I noticed on the 18Z run was that instead of that well-defined arm coming around, the 500 almost evolves until it looks like a bowl. It's very hard to find. I could sort of see where there's an identifiable shortwave in just west of Lake Erie down into West Virginia. This looks like there's some kinking there, but we went from seeing something much sharper to something much flatter. And I'm wondering what do you think about this? Because the 18Z run even though it did still give some accumulating snows, didn't give a whole lot as opposed to the 12Z. But I'm wondering what you think about the 500. I mean, is it more likely to look like this? What the 18Z has, which is a flattish look, where you wind up taking a storm out, further offshore and probably faster, or do you have this, sharper, much more defined? See right here, you can see the kink a lot better, much better defined, upper low, a little further west in Canada, taking longer to get out of the way. Which one do you think is the more likely outcome here?
Well, there are two ways to answer it. One, we can use a scientific method, and then we can use some other method. The first way was saying is, given the entrance of the arrival of the Pacific jet, I think a flatter flow probably, or a more progressive flow, makes sense. So we are seeing an increase in energy coming into the West Coast. So I'm wondering that could be act as a kicker pushing it further away. The second way of measuring it is figuring out what is the most frustrating way for snow fanatics, which will piss them off, and then go with that solution.
Well, that's true.
Just kidding, folks. Just kidding. So there is that. So, but scientifically, I mean, my concern is the arrival of new energy. So, what I would watch over the next 3 days here, is see how much energy is coming in from the West Coast and the Eastern Pacific, which might attack the ridge in Western Canada, and that would in turn affect the downstream of the low placement and the trough and the whole upper low. So that's what I would watch over the next 2 or 3 days, is what's coming into the West Coast of the United States and Canada and impacting the ridge, attacking the ridge in Western Canada and the Rockies, and see how that might affect things. That's my concern over the next 3 days.
Okay. I'm looking at the surface. I got the 12Z up, and
yes, sir.
It has starting on Thursday evening, it has again an expanding area of snow across Tennessee, northern Mississippi, and Alabama, and the new cold high that's in Nebraska, falling thicknesses in the Ohio Valley,
yes.
Snow in western Virginia, western North Carolina, and then of course you've got this low that forms, that comes, the first L is on the Florida, just the western part of the Florida Panhandle, then it jumps to the North Carolina coast and then starts to strengthen as it moves to the northeast. My question is, do you buy the idea that there might be another semi-significant snowfall of some sort across the same areas in the South that are getting it today?
Not without the new shot of really impressive cold air coming in.
All right.
So unless we get another shot of really impressive cold air coming in, I would say no.
Well, I mean, there is another big high that comes down, and you have, there's, for example, I'm just looking at this this is at, 6Z on Friday. The 522 thickness is.
Yeah, that is a big high. That's true. There's a second shot.
There's a second shot that's coming down. I mean, you have 516 thicknesses by Friday morning are into southern Illinois. The 540 is down into northern Alabama and to me in North Georgia. So, I mean,
right.
You do have that. And then, of course, with the low coming to the east, then you get a shot of cold air that comes behind this. The 12Z was particularly robust because it actually, deepened the low nicely. But as you said, if we wind up with that Pacific energy coming in faster, then it's going to be a problem for a developing East Coast storm.
It is. It really is. So I like to see the European does that. The European also is pretty robust with it, but it's a little further north. The low is in Tennessee, and Tennessee is the mixture here. And then it's got some snow and mix into central Virginia, and then but it's very light. The main low is to the north, so all the heavy snow is in north of the Maryland Pennsylvania border. That's what the 12Z European was doing, and it blows up the moderate snow, covers all of Pennsylvania, New York, New Jersey, New England. So the lower mid Atlantic just get a little burst of snow, then it moves to the north. It's a Miller B system is really what it is.
Yeah. The European is a bit different in the sense because it's got the primary. Now, when you're looking at this map, folks, on Tropical Tidbits, it doesn't show precip type. So where you see the green in Illinois and Indiana, that's all snow, obviously.
Right.
But unlike the GFS, which has got the low down near Mobile, the European has it up between Nashville and Knoxville, like almost like a little, like you said, it's a Miller B. And then next, you see the isobars getting elongated and stretched from Virginia eastward, and that's where your low's probably going to redevelop and then move on out to the northeast. The European did, to me, honestly, Dave, the GFS loves to suppress cold air much further south than reality. I kind of like the Europeans look a bit better than the GFS's look today.
I think it makes more sense with the upper air pattern. I do. I think that makes more sense that way.
And by the way, you can
Definitely.
see the Pacific energy coming in because there's an arm of rain that's approaching the Pacific
Yep.
Northwest
Yep.
coast.
Yep. Yep.
The whole West Coast, I should say,
Yep.
up and down. There's
Yep.
an arm of precip there coming in. So you get this cold shot in the east. What is that?
Atmospheric river.
Yes, exactly. You got the. I love that. You know how much I love that. 510, less than 510 thicknesses into the northeast. By the time we get to Sunday morning, and by the time we get to Monday afternoon, the 540 is already north of New York City. I love that.
Southwest winds blow towards you. It goes to more. Yeah. So.
Yeah, I love when that happens. We find, struggling over the last couple of weeks, going through a grinding pattern change that took 3 weeks to play out. And what
like pulling teeth.
And what are we getting? A week's worth of winter weather, a week out of this before we get a relaxation. It's like, I mean, the volatility of the last 2 months for me, and particularly this week, with these two major storms in 1 week going to the Great Lakes and everything else that's been going on with the severe weather and the tornadoes has been really remarkable to see. I think the pattern.
Well, one of the things that this is useful about, if I was a professor and teaching this in meteorology class, is that okay? We had a severely negative AO, we had a severely negative NEO, and everything was in the Midwest. How did that happen? We get a lot of weather hobbies out there with some knowledge will go, well, we got a negative NEO, a negative AO. Wow, it's going to be a big storm. No, because you have to look at the Pacific side. That's why when I do my videos, I talk about the two connections on the Atlantic side and the two connections on the Pacific side. And the Pacific side was terrible. So that's why, with the trough on the West Coast and the blocking, okay, everything bombed out, but instead of bombing out on the East Coast, it bombed out into the Midwest. Because if your trough is on the West Coast, the wavelength supports the mean trough, okay, the storm track going up to the Midwest into the Great Lakes. Okay, we didn't have a ridge on the West Coast. Okay, no. And that's what the problem is. That's why the cold air took so long to get to us. Okay,
because you didn't have that West Coast ridge. Absolutely.
Right.
Well, for me, one of the things I always look at trough at 180. I'm sorry, trough at 160, going down from the Aleutians to Hawaii usually translates to a trough somewhere near 80. And a ridge in the western part of the United States.
Right.
You didn't quite have that. I tell people who get wrapped up in the teleconnections and the negative NAO. Oh, it's a negative NAO, and we've got like you said, the negative NAO and the negative AO. It's all fine and dandy, but if the troughs and ridges are not in the right place, it's going to be a problem. It's not a guarantee of let's call it success.
These last 2 weeks is a perfect example of that. In fact, on Wednesday, I may do the new weather video about that one. Oh. Yes, I think I will.
I'm glad that you got the inspiration. Chuck Cardillo, nice to see you on the chat board tonight. Dave, he wants to know the SOI values as of recently and how they might affect the weather for the rest of the winter.
Well, I'm not okay. A lot of people love and swear by the SOI,
which is
the southern oscillation, southern index oscillation.
Right.
It measures, it's connected to the El Nino, and it measures, the pressures in the Pacific between Australia and Indonesia. I'm not or Tahiti, I think it is. I don't use the SOI on a daily basis. I think it's too volatile for that. I mean, you can look over 30 days. And see what it's doing, and clearly we are moving away from the strong El Nino, but the El Nino is still up around 3.4. The ENSO region is still around 1.9, 1.5. So it's breaking down slowly. Now the data says that once we get into February, it's going to start declining more rapidly. Okay, and I haven't checked to see if the SOI is supporting that idea or not, but that's what should happen. All the models are showing it. Even the new European model, which was actually one of the warmest El Nino models. It had ENSO 3.4, that region warmer than almost any other model in October, November, December. The January one came out, and it's much cooler, faster. They finally realizes, okay, it is breaking down. So it really does begin to break it down in February. So that's also a good sign. That's also why I think February, March is bullish about it, because the El Nino is finally breaking down. And we can see it just bits and pieces of. By the time we get to the end of the month, it should begin to become apparent to everybody that the El Nino is breaking down. And by the way, if we get to the end of January and it's not breaking down, that means something's wrong.
Right.
That means our ideas about February and March are going to be wrong. So we can use the El Nino by January 30th to see whether or not our preconceived notions about February, March are going to be correct.
Right.
It's a good guide. We can use it for that premise.
So in other words, the GFS idea of going back to a trough in the east or the end of the 16-day forecast period kind of needs to happen. Otherwise we may have a problem. Or
Yeah,
I mean, maybe not
it.
exactly on that day, but somewhere around the end of the month or beginning.
Correct.
Okay. Joe Lepresti, nice to see you on the chat board, Joseph. Which of the teleconnections on the Pacific side do you think is more critical, or are they both critical?
Both critical. It's the interaction between them. Actually, and of course, it's the interaction between all four. But
so are we talking? You're talking the PNA and the EPO, correct?
Right. So the PNA is the West Coast ridge or West Coast trough. When the PNA is positive, you have your ridge on the western United States. When it's negative, you have your trough in California and your storms coming in that way. Okay, so that's one aspect. And the EPO is your Alaskan ridge or trough. When the EPO is negative, you have a ridge there which connects you to Siberia, getting cross-polar flow, potentially.
Right.
And when you have it in the positive phase, you have a big low in Alaska, and that's howling, and that means all the winds coming underneath the low slam to Western Canada, and you have mild air and all the cold air gets destroyed. That's what we had in December. We had all those warm temperatures. When all the cold air was being emptied out of Canada, all the energy kept slamming into British Columbia because you had a big upper low in Alaska. The EPO was positive. So what we want for an East Coast snowstorm is the negative EPO and the positive PNA. Now, we have not had that this winter. Either or is one or the other has been out of phase. So there are indications that after about when we get to January, we do go over and sustain positive PNA for February. This would be the first time we've had that since
in a while.
The
The PNA has been. Last winter it was negative.
Yes. All right, and it was for a good portion, right? And on November, December, we kept getting those storms into California. So the PNA is going to flip. That's important. So
I've always kind of felt that for me, I've always thought that the most important of the teleconnections to me was always the EPO, and
that's a big one.
And to me, it's give me a negative EPO any day of the week. I'll take my chances with the NAO, and it'd be nice if it came with a positive PNA. And so this way we have the trough in the east. The NAO to me, because that's the one teleconnection that seems to be the most volatile and the one that doesn't seem to last as long. It tends to flip back and forth. That if you're gonna have it, only some of the time, at least if the EPO is negative, you can find other ways. And I'm not talking about. It doesn't have to be it never really was for me. It was never the idea. It doesn't have to be a big storm, But with a negative EPO, you can get some nice, mid-level events. Occasionally, you do get events that produce 1 foot plus snows. I mean, just look at the winter of 13-14, especially for Long Island, where the snow amounts were doubled. It was pretty much doubled what was going on west. And what I loved about that winter was the fact that with that negative EPO that lasted for pretty much the whole winter with just maybe some minor interruptions. But what I loved about that winter was in the New York area was that every single snowstorm, every single one, Dave, had temperatures that were under at or under 20. At most, maybe you had one where it was in the low 20s. So, people would always say, well, if you've got too much cold air, you're too deep into the cold air, you're not going to get any snow. Well, there was an entire winter on the books, and even 14, 15, the same thing.
Yes.
Every snow event was done with with brutally cold temperatures. And it was wonderful to experience that because oftentimes you get a lot of those storms where you're in the upper 20s, low 30s,
Right,
you're
right,
doing
right.
trying to fight for every degree. But this was a year; those were 2 seasons where you didn't have to worry about the rain snow line at all.
Right.
I mean,
They were great. They were great winters. They were historic
those were
winters.
great. Those were really tremendous
And
winters in my book.
Winters that, by the way, were completely missed by the Climate Prediction Center forecast for the winters.
Yes.
Total busts. Catastrophically bad winter forecasts from CPC. The advantage of having a negative EPO and a negative PNA is that you have a split flow pattern. So the negative PNA means your trough in California, and then the negative EPO means that you have your ridge in Alaska bringing down the cold air. So if it's done right, you can have a split flow, and that's very good.
Well,
because then you have both streams which can merge downstream.
In that March, that late February March period, I think it was 2018, where we had the 4 nor'easters.
Yes.
Those 4 nor'easters in a row. Now that was bizarre because I distinctly remember looking at those teleconnections, and you had the NAO that was like they were all stretched to their extreme, and they held it. The NAO was like 6 standard deviations from the mean negative. The EPO was like 5 or 6 standard deviations negative. And what was really, to me, the most fascinating part of it was that the PNA was like 5 or 6 standard deviations negative in that 4-week period. I mean, yeah, as you just described, if you've got that negative PNA with a negative EPO, you're going to have a split flow. Trough in California, systems coming in, along that southern jet, moving across. The EPO and the NAO are doing, bringing cold air, spreading it across Canada, draining it southward to the United States. That was one of the most fascinating patterns I've seen in my career, and I probably won't see that again.
No, yeah, well, it's hard to. The thing is that I'm not sure if any one of those years were El Nino or La Nina. We may have been in neutral both those years, which is why it enabled to have to look and see whether or not we were in El Nino or La Nina those years. Let me think here. Where were we not? Let me type it in. Hang on a second. I might have it on my phone.
No, yeah. You lost your mic?
Yeah, I just might on my phone. Hang on a second.
Okay.
Let me type it in here. There we go. Let me see if they have it here. I think intensity is 2014-15. 2014-15. Let me see what it was. The 14-15. Is that what it winter? Yes. That was a very weak El Nino, like 0.6, 0.7. It was really weak.
Okay. All right. Mr. Ruben Fairchild, the Storm Chaser Weather, wants to know. He says that you seem to be optimistic, Dave, about having a bullish pattern going forward. Winter always seems to be somewhere in the future. Can we get a percentage of how likely your predictions? You think 75% or something higher or something lower? If you want to put a number on it.
Yeah. 6 out of 10, 60% right now. Can't go higher than that. Not the way this winter's gone, and I have to make certain the El Nino starts breaking down in the next 2 weeks. So right now, about 6 out of 10. So that, which means there's still a chance that I could be completely wrong. 40% is not nothing.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Chityan, Nguyen. I'm sorry. I try to. That's a challenging name for me to pronounce, and I don't want to get it wrong. He said, yes. Is it true with modern models that Arctic air will plunge southward at a more rapid pace to the lee side of the Rockies and the Appalachians than forecast by, say, medium range or most short range models?
I'm trying to think about that question.
Right, want me to say that again? Want me to read it again?
Yeah, say it one more time.
Okay. So is it true with modern American models, Arctic air will plunge southward at a more rapid pace to the lee of the Rockies and the Appalachians than forecast? Faster than forecast. So that's like so Arctic air is coming down. lee of the Rockies and in the Appalachians comes in faster than forecast by the medium range models or most short range models. In other words, reality, the cold air comes in faster versus what the models are showing.
There are instances where that happens, but I don't know if it's a consistent bias or not. I can say there are instances where the cold air has had a tough time getting south. But one of the advantages is, and I don't know whether it's to do with the models or not, when you get to the East Coast, you have much warmer, you have the ocean there and the Gulf of Mexico. So fronts, even in the summertime, will stall on the East Coast because the temperature contrast there is very, very weak. So when you get in the wintertime, you're in the 40s or you're in the 50s on a warm day, you have an Arctic front, has to cross the mountains. Then you also, if you're getting any easterly or southerly flow, you're getting temperatures into the mid-Atlantic and New England off the warm ocean of the Atlantic, relatively mild ocean Atlantic. So the fronts will often slow down there. On the other hand, you don't have that at all. So once they break free from the Rockies, they can come pouring southward as fast as they want to. And there are instances where they come in faster than the models predicted, yes. But I don't know if that's always the case. It depends on each situation synoptically.
Right.
For me, I would not say it's always the case or it's a general rule. There are examples and types of patterns where the cold air will drop down even faster than predicted. But I wouldn't say it's always the case, no.
I would just add to that, as far as the Northeast and the Mid Atlantic is concerned, it's been my experience over the years that during the winter months, if you've got a situation where you have a building high into eastern Canada that is not moving out, that it's building in there, and you get into a northeast wind, that cold air will drain southward faster and further south than what most of the medium range models show. Sometimes those short range models would catch up, but it's also been my experience sometimes that the short range models can't catch up fast enough to that cold air that winds up draining much further south. And there have been a number of instances over the years with rain changing to snow situations, not ones where it necessarily comes at the end, but maybe in cases where it's come in the middle. And that you get a substantial snowfall. That if you've got
ice too,
right, and if you've got if you have an intensifying low that's offshore, just offshore, with all that cold air to the north, oftentimes that cold air comes in way faster. And I can
you're getting two northerly circulations bringing down the cold air from the Hudson Valley straight down. Yeah,
and a good example of that, I think, was that snowstorm. I think it was 2 years ago, the January snowstorm that. I think it was 2 years ago that buried, basically, draw a line from down the Hudson River, New York City, down coastal New Jersey and Long Island, eastward through England, all got, 12 to 20. And just west of that line, the numbers went down pretty quick. I'm not talking about the 2014 half blizzard. In that particular one, there was brutally cold Arctic air, and we had temperatures that were sitting, pretty much in the low 30s, and it was a snow event. But the temperatures during that snowfall went from being near or just over 30 down to single digits, and everything just kind of froze while it was still snowing. So that's an example of where the cold air came in a lot faster. You knew it was going to do that because it almost always does when you have a deepening low offshore. The models just can't seem to catch up to that.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. I know it's what we're talking about. Yep, it was a double circulation that drove it down, and everything west of the vorticity, just everything shut off. There was a very sharp cutoff to it. Nothing, So those storms are really, really interesting because you have to draw the line. And sometimes when you get a coastal storm, you have like 6 inches here, then 3 inches here, then 2 inches the other one. But when you get these sharp cutoffs, everything is, you have a foot, and then you have 2 inches, and you have nothing. Those storms are just so fascinating. I love those storms. They're very frustrating, but they're a lot of fun to forecast, or frustrating, depending on your point of view.
All right, so we're coming up on 9 o'clock Eastern time.
Yeah.
So let me just really quick. I got 2 questions for you, and then we can say goodbye. What are your opinions about the SREF model? Do you look at that?
I don't, and the reason So I have looked at it in the past. I don't use it very often. Um, uh, the problem for me at the SREP is that sometimes you'll see storms really have a huge spread. Now, like it's 20 different models in it, right? So what happens is you'll see, some models a cluster at 2 or 3 inches, then you'll see 6, 8, or 9, then you'll have another cluster at 14 or 15 inches.
Right.
So you'll see a wide spread there, which means, okay, it's going somewhere between 3 and 15 inches. Well, that doesn't tell you anything.
Right. Exactly.
That causes you more uncertainty.
Yeah.
I don't need that. I'd rather look at, the operational models in a short range, since you can look at the European the HRR and the NAM, and you have the GFS, you have high resolution Canadian. I mean, you have all these different other short range models. So to me, I don't have much value in the SREF, but other people use it. But that's just my view.
Yeah, for me, the way I use it is I don't focus on the numbers. I mean, so much the specific numbers. I look at the mean. I look at the mean numbers, and I look at the prior, the runs and which direction it's going.
Yes.
If the numbers are going higher or lower, I think that's probably for me that's always been the best way to use the SREF. And
that's a good way of using it. Yep, use it as a mean trend to see where it's going. Yes,
I agree with that. It just really fast. I'm going to bring up. I got the 0Z HRRR model. It's like it looks like it got a little more juicy with snow. Across Tennessee. I'm kind of on the edge. It's actually got me in rain. And then you got snow. Oh, by Monday evening at 22Z, it's which is 5 o'clock. I mean, it's got snow up through New Jersey. How much is that reaching the ground? I don't know. And over Long Island, and then it kind of blossoms it out, and kind of, doesn't look half too shabby in terms of how much snow it seems to be indicating on its radar view. And it's out pretty much done. It looks like it ends at Philadelphia around 10 a.m. on Tuesday and around New York City at about noon time, and then gone.
Yep. And you can see the northern edge gets into New York around 9, 10 p.m. on Monday night.
All right.
And I have 8 p.m. So yeah, that makes sense. I'm sticking with that. That looks good. Let me see here. Total going from here. What am I going first? Oh, wait a second. That's the onesie. Stupid model. Okay.
Yeah.
That's it. Yeah. Okay. It's got the snow. We said much further north. Richmond's down to 0.3. DC's up 2 point. And you can see the heavy snow in the valley. Look at the valley. They get crushed. And in West Virginia, they just get slammed. Woo!
And
6 to 10 inches in there.
Yeah.
And then you got 4 or 5 inches up in DC, up in New York, North Jersey, Allentown.
Yeah, I'm bringing it up on the. I'm bringing the map up myself here. The local of Pivotal.
And they're bringing all the snow down here in Allentown.
Yeah. So it looks like the numbers on the 0Z are a little juicier. It doesn't matter because when the HRRR gets in range, it always takes them away anyhow. It's got 4 in New York, 2.5 at Islip, 4 at Yonkers, 3.3 at Philly. Basically 2 to 4 inches across New England. It looks like it's kind of lined up pretty well with what you're forecasting. So I'm thinking you're going to want this to verify.
Yep, I would be very happy with that.
Okay, and I can't let you leave without telling us what you think tomorrow night with the Eagles.
Oh, they'll lose. They'll lose.
I'm sorry. Who are they playing?
Tampa Bay.
Oh, Tampa Bay. Okay, so they're going to lose.
Yeah. They don't have AJ Brown. The whole team's in disarray. Okay. I don't know. They may blame Sirianni, but a lot of it's the offensive coordinator. If you notice, that Hurts, I think he leads the league in interceptions or second or something. He did not like the offensive coordinator. That he didn't like him at all, and it caused a lot of conflict. And he didn't understand the scheme. A lot of people don't understand the scheme. It's not very good. And the other problem is the pass rush. I think remember the Eagles pass rush last year, how formidable it was. They have like 8 sacks in the last 9 games. So when you have no pass rush, your secondary is exposed. Because any quarterback that's worth his salt will always find somebody open if there's no pressure on him. And, so it's, the secondary was bad last year, but the Eagles had this great pass rush, so
Right.
trying to cover up the weaknesses. So I don't think.
Green Bay won.
To me, it's 49ers and the Ravens in the Super Bowl. There you go. That's my prediction.
Okay. All right. Well, sir, as always, thank you for coming on. You're knowledgeable. You're informative. We love having you on the show, and you're all like I've said to you. You're always welcome. So
sure. Love to do it. So,
and now that I have your email,
yeah.
It was just a little pre-show jitters on my part because I did. Never mind. All right.
We're good.
All
right, sir.
Big hugs, Dave. Big hugs. Love you. And everybody, thank you for being here on this Sunday night. We will be back tomorrow night. It's Joe Rayo and I back tomorrow night at 7:35 p.m. Eastern Time. Thank you for those of you who have hit the tip jar tonight. And 251 likes. Thank you for doing that. And hopefully you like the show enough that you subscribe to my YouTube channel so you don't miss us Sunday through Thursday at 7:35 p.m. and Fridays and Saturdays when there is a storm going on. And maybe we'll be on this Friday. We'll see.
Right. Okay.
All right.
Thanks, everybody.
99, everybody.
See you.